Hi, I'm Yoke van Dam. I'm so excited to be here today on Gold. I'm called the Kintsugi Queen. I work with leaders and teams to really step into their purpose. So I grew up in Nelspruit, and I would say we were more middle class. So we were born into a normal school, but my parents really invested in our extracurricular activities. So my mom always said we needed to play piano. We were doing ballet, modern dancing, and eventually drama. So where they couldn't invest that money in a private school, they tried to really give us that well-rounded, holistic experience. And my dad especially loved music. He played beautiful piano. He unfortunately died in 2012, but he gave me and my sister that love for music and drama. So we were always very cultural and brought up in a way to love nature and love theatre. When I was little, I was very emotional, and I would, in primary school, very easily burst out in tears. And, kids can be terrible, so I was bullied. And that really led to a bit of trauma in my life, so I had to go for psychology and really face those demons. And I think for a very long time in my life, I wanted to prove to people that I was good enough. And very much later in my life, I only was able to deal with those childhood traumas. And what I learned when I studied NLP in 2012 is even if you don't go through things like sexual traumas or anything dramatic in your life, even the fact that you have parents and you went to school means you've been through trauma. You could have bumped your toe on a table and it could have been really traumatic for you. So don't ever discount other people's traumas. Everyone has unique experiences, and we all need to heal those wounds from childhood to really step into our purpose and be amazing adults. So for many years, I was very frustrated. I was in sales. So I'd studied publishing, and for many years, I would be traveling very vast distances, 7 to 8 hours at a time. And I would get to a place and carry books and do a presentation. I'd feel like I wasn't placed on this planet to just sell. And I was always like yearning for my purpose. Why am I here? How can I use those talents? Those talents that I had in high school where I was doing 3 to 4 musicals a year, singing, dancing, acting, performing. And then what happened is my company sent us on a presentation skills course. And I met Deshan Kaisel, and she's a mountaineer, and she's climbed Everest, I think, about 5 times, and she climbs the 7 summits, the biggest mountains in the world. She comes back and then she speaks about endurance, self-discipline, and she gets sponsored by companies. And I was like, is that a career? I would love that. So I walked up to her during the course and I said to her, is this a career? Can you be a speaker? And she said, yes. And I said, is there a route? And she said, there's no formal route, but you can join Toastmasters. So it took me about 10 years of doing Toastmasters and really learning after hours to perfect the craft of speaking, training, getting on stages, and having lawyers, engineers, doctors saying to me, wow, you should be doing this full time, to eventually getting into coaching and like really going through phases of my life that I could step out of sales, become a sales trainer, and eventually a few years later start my own business, Y Connect. So what I want to say is everything doesn't just happen in a snapshot. It took me 10 years to build the 10,000 hours of building the craft of becoming a speaker. And the 2 most important days in your life is when you get born and when you find your purpose. I had quite a few turning points. So the one was I actually went through a very serious breakup, and I realized that I was broken. And I realized that if you don't deal with your wounds and you form this belief that all men are bad or all relationships are bad, and you put up your walls, you're never going to attract anything good in your life. And I knew that I had to heal in order to really step into my purpose and help others. Because a broken person, and they say you can't give water from an empty bucket. You first need to fill your own bucket. So I went and studied NLP and actually got a lot of healing, but also equipped myself to become a coach. And that was a huge turning point, because when I had the NLP skills, I could use it in speaking, but I could also use it in coaching. And I've seen huge transformation happening in people's lives. So some things strange that happened is at a stage I worked on, I wanted to be more powerful, and I wanted to be taken seriously by CEOs and people like that. And then out of the blue, I got this LinkedIn message from an internationally well-published author, Nick Reed, and he writes business school type of books, and he asked me to review his book because I did a course with him at Entrepreneur Magazine, and he said, you're one of my most professional, respected colleagues. And I was like, what? Has he sent this to the wrong person? Like, what happened here? And what I started realizing when I started doing the internal work and working on my state and how I wanted to feel and be perceived, once your energy shifts, you attract different people in your life. So people started inviting me to speak at events. I got onto radio shows, TV shows, things like that. So things start shifting only when you're actually willing to do the inner work. And that was a huge turning point for me to say, like, work on yourself. And ultimately it allowed me to attract an amazing husband, and we've been married 7 years this year. But it's like, you need to first do the work yourself before the opportunities will arise. I think when the pandemic happened, it felt to me as if the carpet was ripped underneath my feet, because in a few seconds, like within a few days, we all had to work from home. And with things like the internet, I mean, we weren't even able to get any imports. So in terms of equipment, luckily with my husband, he'd already given us lights from photography many years ago, and I had a microphone from his camera. So what I would say is work with what you have. See what you have available before you go and make extensive loans. Try to see if you can't start selling something small first and find a very specific target audience that you can speak to and focus on them first. So start with small steps. Don't go massive where you can completely fail, and just start taking the small steps every single day. What I would also say, if you feel like you're failing all the time, is it's called positive psychology. Every morning, start and make a list of 3 things you want to accomplish that day. And at the end of the day, what you want to do is you want to think, what am I grateful for today? And it might not be the same 3 things, but the fact that you're focusing on gratitude means that your mind and your emotions can't focus on the negative. So very often in life and social media and on the internet, people are fed with toxic news. People get into negativity. If you can focus in your own life on what you're grateful for and what is the next small step you can take, and every day congratulate yourself as you're taking those steps, you can move towards your goal. So see where that goalpost is, but break it into smaller little steps. Try to find mentors, coaches that can support you, that you can get insights from. So for me, I found you can even listen to podcasts of international experts. You don't have to necessarily spend one-on-one time with them. You can attend their masterclasses. You can go on Udemy and buy a course and work through that and develop your skill and craft in that way. So see what's the goal you want to achieve, what are smaller steps, and are there mentors and guides that can help you in directing that path. Because on your own, you can only achieve so much, but the moment you have a coach that has actually done that same work, you can actually fast track and have learned from their mistakes. So because they know what roadblocks they are, what areas to avoid, and what are the actual steps to take, that can really help you a lot. So I am in the speaking, training, and coaching industry, and what I've seen is people really struggle to position themselves as an expert because there's a lot of people out there, but you need to be known to your target audience. So can you find ways of getting in on the media? So whether it's articles that you're writing, blogs that you're writing yourself, making YouTube videos, but specifically getting into a place where people can see you do have expertise. It's not as if you don't know what you're talking about. So that's the first thing. There's also a lot of noise out there. So there's a lot of things happening on social media. People are overloaded with adverts. There's the Poppy Act. So you can't just pick up the phone and cold call like people would have done in the past. What's also changed, but this is across a lot of industries, is consumer behavior has changed. In the past, when a person went to sell a product or service, you would know everything there is about your product or service, and the client would want to find out about it. Now, they've done all of their research online, they've compared you to other people, and now you need to add value in that meeting. You can't go and share anything that's on your website or on social media with them. You can assume they've already seen it. So people get into the trap of being boring and not actually really adding value in meetings specifically. And then also, in terms of the speaking industry, it's all about really, you need to perfect your craft. So you need to put your 10,000 hours in. So speaking is a muscle that you need to keep on exercising. So being on air, doing videos frequently, doing vocal warm-ups, really perfecting your craft and being on. That's really what's important. And then I would say a challenge that a lot of people have is they want to speak a lot, but they're not really very well-rounded as business people. So if you want to sell a career in speaking, training, or coaching, you need to actually be very well-rounded in business and in sales, because you're probably going to have to start out being your own best salesperson. So a lot of people who are great speakers or trainers or coaches, they want to do the work, but they can never get the client. So it's all about, can you really network? Can you engage? Can you show value? Can you then negotiate well, close the sale, and really keep that customer journey going on where people feel satisfied? And a lot of people in this industry are one-man bands, and they need to consider outsourcing certain functions, getting accountants in, legal teams in, even getting external sales forces. So it's really, those are some of the challenges that I would say in building a career in the speaking, coaching, and training industry. So there's different things. My sister and my mother recently traveled to Germany, and I was actually quite impressed when I heard the stories of the Passion Play that they saw in a small little town in Germany. And what happened in that town is, many years ago there was a plague that killed entire countries, and they actually prayed and made a vow to their God to say, if people stop dying, they will keep on putting up this play every 10 years. And this has been happening. And I was actually so impressed. They have these traditions in terms of only people born in this town are allowed to play in this. It's a world-class production. They have animals, live animals, so donkeys, camels, everything on there, and massive choirs, world-class production. And unfortunately, due to COVID, they had to move it out for 2 years. But I think it's more than 100 years that this play has continued for 10 years. So for me, that was very interesting to see that people that made a vow or a promise could actually keep at it over decades and generations. So that's one of the things that really excites me. Also, I'm glad that I'm seeing that companies are becoming more environmentally aware. So I really care for the environment, and I get really upset when I see people throwing garbage on the side of the road. And I was very worried over the last few years when I wasn't really happy about international politics, where certain of the environmental laws was put aside. And recently they've been signed again in terms of the Paris Agreement. Because what you're seeing, if countries like America say we're going to be more environmentally conscious, then other countries follow. Well, if they stop, it's the opposite. So I wish South Africa, that has the most solar, sun power in the world, could actually tap more into environmental energy sources and really have more of a focus on caring for the environment. In terms of my short-term projects that's going to be happening from One Connect side, very soon I am having a Women in Leadership program, and what I'm very excited about that is all over the world, a lot of women have not actually had the leadership opportunities that men have had. And in many ways, I'm bringing in amazing leadership angles. So I'm very passionate about emotional intelligence and This course has had huge success in Cayman Islands, Haiti, Pakistan, Dubai, and now also in South Africa. So it's so nice actually seeing internationally that there's an upliftment in women and discussions happening in terms of really taking hold of their careers, stepping into their purpose, and really being impactful and also empowering other leaders in business. Other projects that I'm involved in is I have a Power of Persuasion presentation bootcamp that I will very soon be doing in person and online as well. Just over the last few months, I've been doing it in-house at various companies, and people were having huge amounts of fun growing in their presentation style and really stepping forward. Very soon, let's say in the next 6 months, I'm looking at also launching a podcast, and I'm thinking of something along the lines of Lessons of the Legends. I'm very passionate about people in the film industry. So I've been writing on my LinkedIn newsletter, for instance, about Elvis Presley and the lessons we can learn from his life, from a mental health point of view, from a work-life balance point of view, from a contract negotiation point of view. So I went to look at legends that are dead or alive internationally and actually analyze some of the life and business lessons we can get out of that in the podcast. And then in the future, I still want to write books, probably along the lines of emotional intelligence and leadership. I'm looking at doing something more like one of my favorite books is The Little Prince and Who Moved My Cheese, which is more metaphoric. So I would like to write a metaphoric book versus just a how-to book, where you can actually learn from the characters and then delving into the case studies. So those are some of the projects. In the long run, I'm looking at really scaling my business, having online courses, and also potentially licensing some of my work so that other trainers can also make use of my own material. So the first book I want to recommend is written by Dr. Edith Eger, and it's called The Choice. And Dr. Edith Eger was a Holocaust survivor, and she's 92, and she's still able to do a high kick and ballet. And her story was very dramatic about how she survived the death camps in Auschwitz and quite a few others. But what I've found is she says no matter what trauma you go through, you can choose how to respond to it. So many years after actually surviving the death camps, her and her husband had moved to America, and she was severely traumatized. She never wanted to speak about what was happening in her life until she went and studied psychology, and she started being introduced to the work of Viktor Frankl, who is also a Holocaust survivor. And eventually they did work together to also help other people heal. So what I found to be very interesting with her work is when you read a book and you see your own journeys of healing and then the healing that she's brought to her clients in the psychology space up to today, you really feel inspired to say, I was not in a death camp at Auschwitz. My life is not that bad. I can get through this. So if you want to really get to a place of building your resilience and perseverance, The Choice is a great one. The other one that I briefly mentioned is called The Little Prince. I've for years bought this book. For everyone that I know, my husband said it was his marriage test to see if I would go for him. He had to read the book and tell me what he enjoyed in the book. And The Little Prince, so this one is in French, but I have a few in English. This one I actually bought in France just for, I don't speak French. But The Little Prince is about this little prince that visits all of these planets, and then he meets these people. Like, for instance, a lamplighter. So I'll just share a little bit about the lamplighter. He sees this lamplighter that climbs this ladder twice every 2 minutes, and then he'll climb the ladder and light the lamp, and then he comes down and he says, good evening, and then he climbs it and he blows out the lamp and he says, good morning. And the little prince said to him, what are you doing? And he said, many years ago I was told that if it becomes evening, I need to climb the ladder, light the lamp, and if it becomes morning, I need to blow it out. But what's happened is the planet is now rotating 3,000 times faster. So now within a minute, I need to light and blow out the lamp twice. So what I do with this book is I actually bring a lot of the metaphors and stories into my training. Like for instance, what are you doing that someone in your life told you is a good thing to do, but the situation has changed? And if we're thinking ever since COVID, what has changed, and are you still doing business in the same way, or should you actually adapt what you're doing? The third book I want to recommend is the book Contagious by Jonah Berger. And what I love about this book is he says, this was actually quite scary because I read this book quite a bit before the pandemic, and it was all about how can you get ideas and your business to spread like a pandemic, and then COVID happened. So Contagious is really about creating positive word of mouth. It's really about getting ideas that can go viral. And I think in business, that is really important, creating positive word of mouth that people actually want to share your ideas. So if you really want to boost your business and marketing, this is the one for you. I am very passionate about a quote from Mother Teresa, who said, "I alone can't change the world, but I can cast a stone amongst a bed of water and watch it create many ripples." So for many years, I was not in a leadership position at work. And people tend to prioritize that and think if you're not a manager, you're not good enough. And what I realized is you can be a leader without a title, and you can actually make major impact from the inside out. So what I realized at that stage, I was working at a kind of a toxic environment company, and I wasn't in a leadership role, but I was in a senior role. And I decided if I can start inspiring people from the inside, from the training department side, it can actually ripple out. And eventually a lot of people came and said, wow, things are starting to change. Wow, we want this training too. So where I was originally recruited to do sales training, it actually became a holistic training for the entire company, where the type of work that I really love in terms of conflict resolution, codependence, team build, was eventually asked for, where they would say to me, these people are in conflict, can you coach them? These two departments are fighting with each other, they need to find a new way forward. And that's the type of work that I really love. So when I started Y Connect, that's really been the kind of work that I'm focusing on, dealing with getting teams to pull closer together, to understand each other better and overcome that toxic behavior. So that was my first quote. The second quote I have is from Maya Angelou, who said, people will forget what you did. They'll forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. In all of my emotional intelligence training, I bring that quote in and we discuss it, because a lot of people will go out to a meeting or interact with clients, and ultimately it's about how people feel on the inside when they're dealing with you. Because if they're feeling a sense of resentment, if they're feeling, I call it fight and flight mode, if they're feeling that you're attacking them, they're going to feel like they want to run away, or they'll feel fearful, or they'll get mad and they want to attack you. So before you do anything, ask yourself, how do you want people to feel? So even before my training or speaking, I set intentions in terms of what do I want people to think about, how do I want them to feel, and what do I want them to do? Because at the end of that training session, if they're not actually going to take action, what's the point? In the same way, if you're doing a keynote, you're inspiring people, but they need to take action. So they need to actually make a commitment in terms of what are they going to do about it. And that also always is going to come from a place of feeling. And sometimes that feeling is going to be unpleasant. Sometimes you need to move people through various emotions to feel the pain, to actually want to do something, right? Here's my inspirational story to the viewers of Gold. In 2009, I went and I did the otter hiking trial. And for many years, I had this mental block about my foot because when I was in high school, I played hockey. And during a hectic match, an opponent came towards me and I sprained my ligaments. And for many years, whenever I went hiking, I would hurt my foot again. And it was day 4 of the Otter hiking trail. And as we were walking, it's quite intense. You get up at 4 or 5 in the morning. You need to monitor what is the sea tides going to do? When is it going to be low tide? Because when you get to the Storms River crossing, you need to be there at low tide. So supposedly you can walk through it. It was really high when we got there. We had to swim through it. Anyhow, it's 10 kilometers to get there. Then you need to go through the sea there, and then you need to still hike about 9 kilometers. So it's a very long day. And I told myself in my mind, the worst thing that can possibly happen is I could sprain my foot right now. And I didn't realize with NLP that what you say, your words, actually creates your reality. So I'd made a picture in my mind of me hurting my foot, and on a straight piece of road, I sprained my ankle during the Otter hiking trail. Many years later, actually in 2012, 2 years later, I went and studied NLP. And I started realizing that I need to reframe my thoughts. So when we hiked in the Drakensberg that same year, it was very steep and we're going downhill on this mountain. Instead of saying, I mustn't fall, I mustn't slip, I was saying to myself, walk carefully, walk slowly, your feet are strong. And this year, in May, we actually went hiking in Greece, where we did quite an intense mountain of 1,000-meter ascent. And my feet has never, ever given me any more problems because I changed the way that I think. So if you want to have success in life, change the way you speak to yourself, and it's called reframing. So take what you're feeling, if it's negative, turn it into the positive and put not in front of it. So if you're stressed about public speaking, you don't say to yourself, I'm so stressed out right now. You say, how do I want to feel? I want to feel energetic. I want to feel confident. And you say, I'm not feeling as confident yet. And now your brain is only hearing the word confident. It's not actually hearing the word not. In South Africa, we tend to fall into the trap of bad-mouthing our government. And there's a lot of things like power that has become quite an issue. But what people tend to do is they tend to get stuck in negativity, and it spirals in social media, and it spirals on WhatsApp groups. And I've even been seeing in my own community, in my own street, how people can get so negative and escalate issues about a complex in a way where it's not helpful and where it's not actually leading to solutions. So I would love people to stop their toxic negativity on social media and in WhatsApp groups and in general in life. Focus on what's working and focus on the solution. I always joke and I say in my emotional intelligence training, if you're a manager and your colleague has dropped an egg on the floor, do you now go and freak out and say, there's an egg on the floor, it's smelling rotten, and now you're like going on and on and on about the egg? Everyone sees the eggs lying on the floor. Everyone's smelling the eggs lying on the floor. Why not actually help them to pick it up and clean it up? So I want to say, be part of the solution and stop just commenting and berating people on social media in a negative way. Focus on rather coming up with solutions and being part of the solution, and focus on gratitude. What can you be grateful for, and how can you work around things that are outside of your control? So the millennials were born after the start of the internet, and I think what they have to their advantage is they're very tech savvy and they're very connected. They also really care about the world, and they're actually asking deep questions. I also believe they're very agile, so very often this frustrates people where they might be jumping around jobs. But what I feel that millennials can do more of is actually start getting involved in the corporate social responsibility initiatives and caring about the community. So where you're very passionate about caring for the world and big issues, try to see if you can't actually start an initiative that can make a difference, and start getting your companies to get involved in that, where they can actually uplift and inspire others. Get into your networks and see if you can connect to others for your tech savviness to see where you can create opportunities and actually make a difference in the world. I recently did my Clifton Strengths, which is a tool where you can get to know certain personality traits about yourself. And I learned something about myself, that I'm an ideator. And I realized I come up with incredible ideas. So when I'm doing a chat session with a team, when I'm training a team, or even doing one-on-one coaching, I can ideate and come up with ideas really, really quickly. Then furthermore, I believe I'm a servant leader. So for me, it's all about actually doing the work. So I'm part of the Professional Speakers of Southern Africa. And previously, I was part of Toastmasters International for more than 10 years. And I always laugh and say, me and my sister, we always end up in leadership because we always want to influence, and we are servant leaders. So we want to make a difference. At the moment, I'm helping place speakers for our various events. I think I'm really good at delegating, organizing, and planning, because I know that I could have a goal. I know what I want the event to look like, and how can I get people to help us, support us actually to get there. My wish for gold is that people can uncover what was the purpose for them arriving on planet Earth, in your country, in your hometown, in your house, at that company, at that point in time. And is there a reason why you're still there, or is there something else that you need to be doing? Are you really living out your talents? If you had to die tomorrow and you had to write the eulogy from your family's point of view or your friend's point of view, and you had to listen to that yourself, would you be happy with what they say about you? Stephen Covey wrote about this in one of his books, and I did this exercise many years ago, and I found that when I looked at my life, I wasn't really satisfied from a relationship point of view of how I was treating my family. And I realized that I needed to prioritize calling them, reaching out, and actually really having great relationships with them. My wish for gold is that the viewership really grows and explodes way beyond the borders of South Africa. That people really get inspired, but that they don't only get inspired, that they actually choose action. I wish that the viewers would go out and find mentors and coaches. They'll start listening to podcasts, that they'll start reading more books, and that they start moving beyond the realms of their own family. They can actually impact other people and impact people in the community around them and in much broader circles. I wish Gold to get amazing sponsorships, to be seen by international TV shows, and for people's lives to really change and be impacted. Because Gold stands for positivity, influence, and growth. I have two people that I want to highlight that have really stood the test of time. The first is Nikki Aptenor, a speaker that's based in Cape Town. And Nikki was born without arms. And ever since she was a child, her parents always made her focus on what can she do rather than what she can't do. She went on to become a psychologist, and she touches so many people's lives in helping them heal. And then she's an international keynote speaker, inspiring people. And what really blows me away of Nikki is she came up with this initiative called Nikki Drives. And she is now, through her foundation, actually helping people that are disabled in some way to get cars modified so they can drive. Like with her, she doesn't have any arms, but she's driving using her feet. She's able to use her feet to type WhatsApps, to do anything that you do with your hands. She's using her feet. When I look at Nikki, I get so inspired to also realize that where are the areas where I'm actually stopping myself from doing something? And can I not focus on what I can do rather than what I can't do? The second person that really inspires me is Nick Smith. He's called the Rebel Ninja, another speaking friend of mine. He was as a little baby thrown in a car accident outside of the car where a lot of his family members actually died, outside of the car where cars went slamming into them. So he had to overcome that trauma of family members dying, plus he had severe damage where a certain side of his body is actually, not functioning fully. And doctors said to him that he would never be able to walk. Currently now, he is a speaker and he inspires people about growth mindset, and he actually teaches them to dance. So he is completely moved beyond what doctors said would be possible in his life, and he's happily married, touching and inspiring people all over the world. So when I look at these two people where you would think the cards that they were dealt wasn't necessarily positive, they decided to turn it around, and through the nurturing of their parents that actually cared about them, to create that mindset to say that anything is possible, they were willing to overcome, and now they can actually teach and grow others to also heal. Success for me is about really having a balanced lifestyle. At the moment, there's a lot of talk out there about quiet quitting, where they say people are quietly not wanting to do their work anymore and they start doing the bare minimum. And I, in many ways, disagree with that. I feel that you should have a balanced lifestyle. I don't think that you should work every single night, every single weekend, even if you're an entrepreneur. So for me, the way success looks like for myself is having discretionary spend and time so that I can actually go and visit my mom for a long weekend, or I can go and travel every second year, or I can go on vacation. I can actually spend time with my family and friends and do things over the weekends. So for me, success is not being busy every single minute of the day and working myself to the bone, but rather doing fulfilling work that is changing lives and being paid for that. And what will success look like for you? Success, I think, really has to do with looking at that life wheel and analyzing how you're doing on the spiritual side, on the relationship side, on your finances side, on all of the different areas, on fitness, on health. If you look at those 7 levels, are you well balanced, or are you only focusing on money? Is that really successful if you have no relationships in your life? So try to rather be balanced in all of the areas, and then you will be successful. Those 4 major keys of being successful in life for me has to do with work-life balance. So not just working seven days a week up till very late in the evening. So also allowing yourself time to enjoy yourself. So also planning activities, date nights, time with your kids, time with your friends. So planning for those highs that you can have, because if you're not going to plan for fun things, it's never going to happen, right? The second thing is about being agile. What COVID has really taught us is that we need to be nimble and be able to move around. So when you're dealing with clients, are you flexible? Are you open to feedback? Are you able to tweak things to work in the way that they want it? Or are you very fixed in the way that you want things? The third thing has to do with having a growth mindset. There are 2 types of mindset. You get a fixed mindset, which basically says, I was born with these talents or I wasn't. So a fixed mindset person will say, my dad was bad at maths, so I'm going to be bad at maths. Well, a growth mindset person says, no, I will find a teacher and I'm going to learn and I'm going to practice and I can become better. A growth mindset person can learn from their mistakes. They're willing to listen to feedback. They're willing to be coached and mentored. Well, the fixed mindset person says, this is me, just deal with it. So where do you see yourself? Are you fixed mindset or are you more growth mindset? Are there areas where you need to move away from having that fixed mindset to rather be open to feedback and grow? So far, we've spoken about quite a few areas of being successful. And the 4th one is having a clear direction and purpose in your life. So some of the ways in which you could do it is trying out doing a vision board. So how you do a vision board is you can do it on your computer, but you could also get magazines, newspaper clippings, and cutting out pictures of things that looks like the life that you want. And then you get specific words and you can make it big, you can laminate it, or you can stick it on your computer screen. But what you do is, if you keep on seeing this image day in and day out and you stick it against your wall close to your workspace, you will start actually allocating budget and your monthly spend towards it. For instance, I'll give you an example. On a vision board I made quite a few years ago, it was when I was still dating my husband, I actually put a picture of us because I saw, that we want to have a future together. I put a picture of a house. I also put certain destinations. So I put a safari tent. I put pictures of Botswana. I put hiking pictures and even dancing pictures. And then there was things, so a lot of interests that I have that I wanted to get fulfilled. And then what was interesting, within 4 months we were engaged, and then within the next 6 months we were married. And then when we went on our honeymoon that we planned for, it looked like the pictures on the vision board. We planned and saved money to go to Thailand. So it doesn't just happen instantly. It's about saying, I'm going to work really hard on this sales project, because if I get this money, I'm going to put money aside to save for that vacation that I went with my partner or with my kids. Or if you know that you want to send your kids to a private school, you put those pictures up there so that you can slowly but surely start investing money and focusing on that. And then instead of just wasting money on clothing or different things, you could actually know that, no, I need to be more budget conscious, because that is the goal. That is what we're working towards. So if you really want to be successful, you need to have a dream. You need to visually see it, but then you need to constantly actually take actions towards it. Old viewers, here are my 4 areas that you can be successful. The first one is you need to have a work-life balance. My second one is you need to be agile. You need to have a growth mindset. And then lastly, 4th, you need to have a vision, which you can do using a vision board. Hi, I'm Yoke van Dam, the Kintsugi Queen. I work with leaders and teams to tap into their purpose and create a meaningful workspace. This is gold. Hi, I'm Yoke van Dam, the Kintsugi Queen. I work with leaders and teams to create meaningful workspaces. Catch me on gold this week. Hi, I'm Yoke van Dam, the Kintsugi Queen. I work with leaders and teams to tap into their purpose and create a meaningful workspace. Catch me on gold this week. Go for gold. Hi, I'm Yoke van Dam, professional speaker and trainer creating meaningful workspaces. Catch me on gold with King Nee. I want to give a shout out to my husband Etienne, my sister Zani, and my mother Santi for all the inspiration and the support they give in my life. I also want to give a shout out to the PSA SA community, the professional speakers of Southern Africa, for this incredible tribe that we have and this community we've created in terms of creating inspiration and changing the world. And to all of the other viewers out there, I hope that you found some inspiration and tools that can really move you forward.